Hi to everybody, and thank you for staying with us again. This is our second lesson, and hopefully you have done your first welcoming session. And now you know that we will be doing now 19 lessons devoted to teaching communicatively. If we go back to the history of this communicative approach, I would like to mention that it was born when the world understood that it was very difficult, or basically next to impossible, to teach languages, translating languages from one to another. And when we translate, we don't put into consideration the idea that the languages are different. So the translation method, or the method when we treat other words in other languages the same way as we treat our language, different. Now I think the beginning of this approach was, let's say, about 30 years ago, when methodologists decided to divide lessons, and that's where we teach languages, into developing different skills. That's how the idea of this was born. We develop different skills. We don't translate, or we don't teach in this traditionally accepted way. So from there, when we divide the idea of learning into the idea of developing skills, we can say now that there are different skills we develop. And the different skills are speaking skills, listening skills, language skills, writing skills, reading skills, again, reading for different purposes. So once we have understood that developing different skills is our main focus, our life has become easier, because looking at the course book, for example, what do we see? We see a page, and we think that this page will give us an idea how to teach our students. I look at the page, and what I see the writer's ideas, and I buy these ideas. I think that, of course, they are writers, and they know how to teach, they know what material to use, they know how to organize a lesson. And what I see on the page is a kind of a number of tasks and activities. And I do these activities one by one, having no idea what I do with these tasks, or, which is more importantly, what these tasks do to the learners. And once I realized that what I'm doing, or not now, what I was doing, was a bit of a wrong idea, because doing the activities didn't develop any skills in my students. I looked at the skills I need to develop, and the skills for me were organized into the types of lessons. And types of lessons, now if you look at this table, which is in front of you, you can see the types of lessons are skills-based lessons and language-based lessons. And in terms of skills, we have productive and receptive. What it means is that overall, the receptive skill is that when we teach our students to receive information. And here we're talking about information. So when they know how to receive information generally, we call it receptive skills. And here we have listening and reading skills. When we go into detail and want to develop receiving information with a particular purpose, let's say reading for detail, that's a particular sub-skill. So each skill can be divided into sub-skills. So overall, receptive skills, listening and reading, And here we deal with information. And this is the most important part, I would say, of the whole course. When we divide what we develop, if we want to develop receptive skills, reading or listening, the most important thing here is information. How our students see this information, can deal with it, treat it, give opinion upon this information. Remember at the beginning of this I said that what we see on the page is a mix. They put everything in the mix, the authors. They think they know, they probably know how to deal with the mix, and we need to know. That's why we're doing this course. So normally we see a text, we rush into the text to find some language, some grammar there. We think that this language or grammar would help our students to do something. No, it doesn't, and it won't. What we need to do, we need to treat reading for reading, and reading is for information. The information should be interesting, should be challenging, and it's not about the language that is our obstacle to get this information. And information is there, and we need to develop this skill so our students will get this information regardless the level of their English. The next big group here on the skills based is productive speaking and writing. We will be mentioning some speaking and writing in this course, but we won't be focusing on these skills because it's our next course. You can read. Remember, I suggested that you should read some books, and in these books you will find this information about speaking and writing. And if you know what to look for or to look into, you will probably find the way of learning. Types of lessons, two big categories, skills and language. Now let's look at the language. Language, here we will be calling something we know is grammar. And grammar, something we knew, something we like, something we would always teach. And because we think that grammar is the most important thing in this learning process, we tend to teach it every lesson. So we shouldn't. When we teach receptive skills, listening and reading, there should be no grammar there. This is also how to deal with information, unless we go for a mixture. Sometimes we mix two lessons, and there are different approaches to these lessons, and we will be talking about these approaches here in this course. But at the moment we look at the pure lessons, and pure lessons here, language-based lessons, and you have two categories here again. The left one is lexical items, single items, collocations, set phrases. That's where we teach vocabulary. And I want to mention here that teaching vocabulary is a lesson. It's not a part of a reading lesson when we do PTV, pre-teach vocabulary, to ease the way our students into the reading. Here we're talking about teaching a vocabulary lesson, teaching collocations. And again, we will be talking about collocation lessons later in the course. And now, the basics of the basics: tenses, functions, and structure. We divide language-based lessons into teaching different types of grammar. To identify these different types of grammar, we will be looking at the next handout. But before we do this, I would like you to go back and to look down at the first handout saying tenses, functions, and structures. And as you see, they overlap. Why do they overlap? Because sometimes it's very difficult to identify what is what. To help us do this, let's look at the second handout, where you have a group of sentences. Now, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, so you stop the recording, you stop the lesson, as if being real students. I will give you a task and you do the task. So the task is, what do each group of sentences have in common? And here your answers should be either tenses, functions, or structures. So they have in common this or that. And in 5 minutes, we'll compare the answers. Now you do your task. I have a cup of coffee. Wait for your answers and we'll go back and check the answers.